So, I told you that this butter and seed oil study was a big deal on the internets. So, let's watch a little video from Vinay.
There's a new paper out now in JAMA Internal Medicine, and it actually makes the claim that butter is worse for you than seed oils. That's right, it comes head on in the MAHA coalition and tries to fight back on a MAHA talking point. But what is this paper? Why was it published in JAMA IM? Is it credible science? Let me break it down for you.
Here's my
It's a hat day for him, bro.
It's
We're
a
a
hat
hat
day. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of his videos, but I think he has wild hair. So, we're going to look at the study doing, but the first thing he's talking about here is make America healthy again and Donald Trump and stuff. And I don't know what this paper has to do with any of that. It seems out of left field for me.
All right, I had a chance to read Butter and Plant-Based Oil Intake and Mortality, which is making the rounds.
Okay, so he had a chance to read it. So he read it, right?
Mm.
That's what he's saying. He read it.
Because it was published in a pretty good medical journal, JAMA Internal Medicine.
It's a pretty good journal. JAMA IM is a pretty good journal.
The editors there, no secret, they don't like the MAHA movement and they want to #resist.
Wait a minute. Is it a good journal or not?
Yeah, that's crazy. Make up your mind. And do they say they're resisting? I mean, how's he drawing that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So they decided to publish this paper that claims to look at observational data and draw the conclusion that butter is worse for you than plant-based seed oils.
Now, he says they make the claim that they looked at observational data and came to the conclusion. That's what they did. They're not claiming to have done that. That's what they did.
Yeah.
But the paper suffers from three limitations. Let me run through three limitations.
As opposed to studies that have zero limitations.
Number one, they actually have no clue how much butter anyone ate. You see, they gave people a food frequency questionnaire. It just said that I eat butter 3 times a week, 2 times a week, 1 time a week. It doesn't say how much butter they ate. It doesn't say if they had a butter croissant, put a smear of butter on a piece of toast, or had a heavy gumbo-rich food with a lot of butter in their cooking. It doesn't tell you how much butter. So they need to get to how many grams of butter you eat. And what they do is they correlate a food frequency questionnaire with a 7-day dietary log. And they look to see at the correlation between how much people eat in this dietary log, where we gave people a scale, told them to write all that down, and food frequency questionnaires. And they find that each individual food product has a different correlation coefficient, different R-squared value. And actually, I pulled the reference and I found that in all these correlations in this huge validation study, butter was one of the worst ones. In other words, that the how often you eat question doesn't really tell you how much butter someone eats. It's actually one of the worst correlations. So that's problem number one. They've got no clue how much butter you're eating.
All right, man. Problem number one. They have no clue how much butter we're eating. All right, so let's go into this. So his first point here is we don't know if it's butter, a butter croissant, a smear of butter on a piece of toast, or if they had a heavy gumbo-rich food, right?
Right.
So I've eaten gumbo, and I've seen a few gumbo recipes, and I thought, why on earth does he think that gumbo has a lot of butter in it?
I've never had butter in gumbo.
So I Googled traditional gumbo recipes.
Looking at it now.
The first page of results for traditional gumbo recipes netted me, I don't know, 9 or 10 recipes.
Mm-hmm.
This was the only recipe on the first page that had any butter in it, and it calls for 4 tablespoons, half a stick of unsalted butter. Now, Dwayne, up here at the top, this serves 8. This is 8 servings.
Mm-hmm.
So if we divide the number of tablespoons by the number of servings, we get a half a tablespoon of butter per serving. Now, ironically, this one, along with all the other gumbo recipes on the page, call for some form of seed oil, canola oil or vegetable oil.
Right.
So that's interesting. Now, a tablespoon of butter is 14 grams. So if I have half a tablespoon in one serving of this gumbo, that's 7 grams.
Right.
And if we look in the study, we're going to find out here. All right. So right away, we see here substituting 10 grams of total butter with an equivalent amount of total plant-based oil was associated with an estimated 17% reduction in total mortality and a 17% reduction in cancer mortality. And when we come down here to the section labeled dietary assessment, we can see that their food frequency questionnaire consisted of consumption of 5 grams per pat. So if this gumbo recipe has 7 grams per serving, that falls right in line with what was estimated in the study,
I
right?
wonder, did he just read the abstract and the conclusion?
Hmm. I don't know. Well, he said he read it, right?
Hmm. Well, yeah,
Right. And so because he read it, we can see that a gumbo recipe would fall right in line with what's in here.
right.
And something we have done in the past is we have looked at the questionnaires. And so I have them pulled up, but I'm just going to show everyone just how easy this is. And of course, all of the Zoom stuff is going to be in my way. So in this study was the nurses' health studies 1 and 2 and health professionals follow up. And all you have to do is Google nurses' health study questionnaire, and it will take you right to it. And we don't need to log in or anything. All you got to do is scroll down, and you can actually look at the questionnaires that are given for these cohorts. Same thing for the health professionals follow up. Just Google health professionals follow up questionnaire, and it'll take you right to it. And this, my friend, is the food frequency questionnaire for the health professionals follow up. It's exactly the same as the one in the nurses' health study. Now, remember, we don't know how much butter. We can't tell if it was a butter croissant, a smear on a piece of toast, or a heavy gumbo rich food. So under the dairy food section right here, we have spreads added to food or bread exclude the use in cooking. So this section would indicate to me that this is butter that is not used in a heavy gumbo rich food. Would
Right.
you agree?
It's absolutely
Right. And so we have pure butter or ghee, margarine, and then butter with the added oil. And they give some actual, Land O'Lakes butter with canola oil, for example.
right.
And they ask you how many average use you had 2 to 4 times per week, 5 to 6 times per week. Dwayne, if you were just to estimate how much butter somebody added to their food or their bread, how much would you say? Half a tablespoon?
I, I don't even think most people would use up to a tablespoon.
One
Is
pat
that
of
per day?
butter?
Per
One
day?
pat. Well,
Per day?
average use per week. So
Oh,
you
per
have
week?
we have it
No
per
more.
day, once per day, 2 to 3 times per day,
No
four
more
to
than a
five.
tablespoon. Tablespoon max. I think it'd be a half tablespoon, honestly.
Sure. Yeah,
That's a
okay.
that's a lot of butter.
That's a lot of butter. But this would be butter that's added to the food at the table. So maybe some butter on some corn or something,
Yeah.
right? Or
Right.
or added to bread.
Yep.
If we scroll on down here to the sweets, baked goods, and miscellaneous, and right here, I don't know if you can see that. We have sweet rolls, coffee cake, or other pastry. Dwayne, do you think a butter croissant would fit into the other pastry category?
I would. Yeah.
Okay, so we can actually differentiate between whether the butter was in a butter croissant
Yep.
or smeared on bread.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then if we come down a little bit more to the bottom, we see how often do you eat pan fried or sauteed food at home? And the next question is what kind of fat is most often used when you pan fry or saute at home? We have real
Real
butter,
butter,
margarine,
margarine.
olive oil, vegetable oil. What kind of fat is most often used for baking cookies? And what type of cooking oil is most often used at home? How often do you eat deep fried shrimp, deep fried chicken, fish, shrimp, clams, onion rings away from home? So we can actually get an indication of how often people are adding butter to their bread or food at the table what foods they're eating that would call for butter in the recipe, and how often people would add butter to pan fry or saute. Now, interestingly, when you add butter to the gumbo recipe, it is to saute.
Right.
So we actually can tell where that butter was coming from, right?
Right. I agree with that completely.
And then here, question 27. How often do you eat toasted bread, bagel, English muffins? So, Dwayne, if we have the question, how often do you consume butter that's added to food or bread? And then we have a question, how often do you eat toasted breads? Do you think we could get an indication as to where people are adding butter to other foods or whether they're having a smear on their bread?
No, absolutely. You can totally identify that. Sauteed, or are you eating toast? Yep,
Wow. Yeah.
absolutely.
So, yeah, interesting stuff there, right?
Yep. I don't think you read that.
Yeah. Now the food frequency correlation. Oh, well, we'll go back. Let's go back to that. So let's go back up to the dairy section here. Now it is true that they didn't ask for quantities of butter like they did for the milk here. So for milk, it's 8 ounce glasses. How many times, on average did you drink an 8 ounce glass? And so if people say, well, I have one per day, we can get an estimate of how much milk they're drinking. And we don't see that with the butter. That is true, right?
Hmm.
So based on that, we would expect to see a much higher correlation. So we talked about the correlation between the 7-day weighed and measured food logs and the food frequency questionnaire. So we would expect to see a higher correlation between butter or between milk, what's actually consumed and what's reported in the food frequency questionnaire, than for the butter. You think that's a fair assessment?
Yep, I do.
This is the reference that he pulled, and I pulled it too. It's reference 21. Actually, our reference is 21 through 24. So this is the reference 21, and this is the reproducibility and validity of food intake measurements from a semi-quantitative food frequency questionnaire. So, how well does the 7-day weighed and measured food log actually correlate? All right. So, how well are people actually reporting what they eat versus what they actually eat? So, we are expecting to see, and remember, he said that butter was one of the lowest correlations, right? Meaning that
Hmm.
what people report on their food frequency questionnaire doesn't actually line up very well with what
Right,
they're actually eating.
right.
And so, what I've done is I've highlighted butter in green, the correlations in green. And so, if any other food had the same correlation coefficient, that was in green. If a food had a higher correlation than butter, I labeled that in red. And if it had a lower correlation, I labeled that in blue. And so what we're expecting to see here is a big field of red because butter has the lowest correlation of any of the foods, right?
Right.
And so as we scroll down here for the dairy section, between the blues and the reds, it's actually a little bit half and half.
Yep.
And this all the way over here on the right, de-attenuated correlation. So de-attenuated correlation would be the one that we would be most concerned with. So this would be after they've adjusted for things like measurement error and different errors that we would get for these other correlations. We get a 0.74. Now at the top here, we have our skim milk and our whole milk. And for skim milk, we have a correlation of 0.88. And for whole milk, we have a correlation of 0.64. Dwayne, does 0.74 fit right in between zero point 0.8 and 0.67?
Absolutely.
Well, that's
Absolutely.
that's weird, right?
Yep.
Because we were expecting that to be pretty low
No, that's right in the middle.
from what he said. That's interesting. And so, well, let's just keep scrolling on down here. We're seeing more blue now. We're seeing a lot more blue now. A little bit of red mixed in there. A lot more blue. Oh, there's a lot of red there. Some blue, one green, and a lot more blue. Now, you know, Dwayne, I don't have a PhD. And so my first thought when I saw this is that, of course, I must be wrong. So I went ahead and counted these up. And for our de-attenuated correlation, butter scored higher. There's 122 food items on this list. And butter scored higher than 90, but lower than 30. And at our best correlation over here on the far left, butter scored higher than 106 different food items, but less than 14. So that would put butter's correlation in the top 25%. I get confused easily doing because I'm not a doctor. If if butter has a correlation that's in the top 25%, meaning it scored higher than 75% of the foods listed on here, does that fall in line with what he said about butter, or is it the exact opposite?
No, no, it's the exact opposite. If the butter's in the top 25%, that means, yeah, not a good thing compared to the others in the lower. Nope.
Well,
Nope, you're
that's
not thinking.
interesting because he read it, right?
Yeah. Oh, he read it. I think he just read what he wanted to see. I'm sorry. Sorry, Doc.
Now, because he read it, they actually explain how they came up with the quantity of butter right here in the section titled Dietary Assessment. And you can see that in purple. Total butter intake was calculated by multiplying the frequency of consumption by 5 grams per pat from the sum of 3 food frequency questionnaire items. And we went over those: butter
Yep, yep.
and butter margarine blend, spreadable butter added to food and bread, and butter used in baking and frying at home.
Yep. Well, let's wait a minute. So
Problem no-
he said we have no idea how much butter they used.
Yeah,
Uh,
turns out we
right,
actually do.
right there,
And
right there.
and when we take a 7-day take a person and we say, hey, we want you to weigh and measure all the food you eat for 7 days. You're going to log that. And then we find out how accurate their food frequency questionnaire for the same person, how much those individual foods correlate. Butter actually correlates quite high.
Yep.
Problem number 2. They are lumping together the seed oils, which everyone knows that RFK Jr. and the Maha movement don't like, with extra virgin olive oil. In fact, they lump them all together. They put corn, safflower, soybean, canola, and olive oil in a single bucket. But here's the problem. Nobody is going to say that olive oil is bad for you. Everybody loves extra virgin olive oil. That's one thing that all sides agree on. They're lumping all these oils together. That to me makes no sense, okay? That to me is sort of stacking the deck in favor of this conclusion. Why? Because rich people love extra virgin olive oil.
Oh, whoa,
I
whoa, whoa, whoa. Did he just say that?
That rich people
Rich people
love extra
love
virgin.
extra virgin olive oil.
That's interesting, right?
Wow. Wow. Just hold your horses there, Wildcat. I am not rich, but we like extra virgin olive oil. So, boom, that's a false statement. You can't make that generalization.
Hmm.
Holy moly, dude.
Yeah.
Wear
Let's
a
hear what he
hat.
has. Let's hear what he has to say. All right, this is problem number 2. So we talked over problem number 1. Problem number 2 here.
I do too. I have a certain extra virgin olive oil I like to cook with. I'll talk more about that at the end of the video.
All right, Dwayne. Problem number 2. They're lumping all these seed oils together with olive oil. And again, I uh I took 2 LLMs, so 2 AIs. I did Google Gemini and I did ChatGPT, and I fed them the PDF of this and I said, please give me the number of times Trump, RFK Jr., Maha, Make America Great Again, Robert, and Kennedy appear. And I also did it within the PDF editor that I have. You can search for words.
Mhm.
And I got a result of 0 hits for any of those words.
Right. He's
Again,
making
I,
it. Yeah.
I don't know
Ah.
what RFK Jr., Trump, and Maha have to do with this paper. And at this point, this sounds like the ramblings of an insane person. But, all right, Dwayne, because he read it, they lump together all of these seed oils. And because he read it, he of course saw that in table 1 here, over here on the right in red, we
Yep.
have a section without olive
Yep.
oil. In table one continued, over to the right without olive oil.
Hmm.
In table two, down here at the bottom, we have a section without olive oil. In table three, we actually have corn oil by itself, safflower oil by itself, canola oil
Canola,
by itself,
soybean.
soybean oil by itself, and olive oil by itself. In table four, you'll see right up here,
Total
total
butter.
butter, total plant-based oil, and plant-based oil without olive oil.
Well, he read that.
Because he read that, they even did a substitution analysis here in figure, just figure without a number. Substitution of butter replaced by plant oil without olive oil, just soybean oil, and olive oil. Because he read it. Now he says nobody is going to say that olive oil is bad for you. Dwayne, based on what evidence?
Nobody's going to say it because, he read it. Nobody's going to say it. It must say somewhere in here that nobody's going to say that. There's nobody's going to say that.
Well, we have studies looking at olive oil and mortality.
Yep.
Are those epidemiological studies? Are those observation studies? Because as far as I know, we don't have any studies where we took a group of people and we randomized them to either consuming olive oil or not consuming olive oil, and we followed them for 50 years and we just, waited to see who died first. So is the evidence that he's using to say that olive oil is healthy the same kind of evidence that this study is?
No, no, I don't know where he's getting his stuff. I'm still stuck on rich people like olive oil. I'm still stuck on that.
So I have another question. Is he honestly saying that olive oil produces such profound mortality effects that when we include it in the category with the other oils, that it actually is so beneficial, it overrides the negative effects from the seed oils?
It sounds like that's what he's saying.
So it sounds like what he's saying is that a diet, he just admitted that a diet that has excludes butter and includes only oils is healthier than a diet with only butter, so long as there's olive oil in it.
Right. That's kind of what I take.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if we look at this substitution analysis here and we see if we replace butter by any of these oils, we have a decrease in the hazard ratio for all of these mortalities. So if you're going to say that olive oil, by lumping olive oil in here, that is the thing that produced the result, right? So what
Hmm.
he's saying is that he can have some degree of confidence in the results here because it includes olive oil. Well, when we exclude olive oil, we get the same results. So by his own admission, he would have to accept that total plant-based oil without olive oil, soybean oil, uh, are just as healthy or reduce mortality hazard ratios just as much as olive oil based on the results here, right?
Hmm.
All right, let's carry on.
Problem number 3, the people who eat butter in this time period over the last few decades, when we had a concerted effort to demonize saturated fats, they're fundamentally different than the people who eat these other oils. They're more likely to be smokers. They have different exercise practice patterns. They're eating different foods. They're different socioeconomic status. They're just different people. And you can see all that in table 1 of the manuscript.
Whoa. Whoa. So people who use butter are just different kinds of people. Smokers, different kind of people.
They're just people who eat the butter are just different kinds of people during this time period. Dwayne, they're more likely to be smokers. And because he read it, we can see all of this in table 1 because he read table 1. We can look, we have past smoking, and we have current smoking. Now remember, we have three different cohorts in here. We have the Nurses Health Study 1.
Right.
Right here we have Nurses Health Study 2,
Right.
and we have the Health Professionals Follow-Up.
Right.
And we have the same stuff for all of them, past smoking, current smoking. And what we can see from table 1 here is that really the only difference in smokers was in the Nurses Health Study 1. So if we look up here, so level 4 would be the highest intake of butter. Level 4 would be the highest of intake without olive oil. And sure, current smokers in that cohort were higher in the butter group. However, in the Nurses Health Study 2, it was exactly the same.
Right.
And in the health professionals follow-up, it was slightly higher, but we're looking at percentage of participants. So at best, for his argument, you have a difference of about 6% here in Nurses Health, 6% of the number of participants in Nurses Health Study 1. And in health professionals follow-up, there are a few more current smokers, but it's only 0.7%, not even a full percent. So is he saying that smoking has an effect on mortality, Dwayne?
I don't know what he's saying anymore. I'm still stuck on rich people like olive oil. I'm sorry. Yeah, but those numbers are so small. Those are just in. I'm
Yeah.
not saying they're
Well,
not significant. They're in
if you were going to say,
relatively 0.7% is not significant.
if you were going to say, well, we can't trust the results from this study because the people who ate butter smoked more. So you would be saying that smoking would be the reason that we're seeing this effect, this difference in effect in mortality.
An absolute factor. Yes, absolutely.
Now, what kind of evidence do we have that would lead us to believe that smoking has any effect on mortality? Would it be observational evidence? Dwayne, I'm not a PhD and I don't teach epidemiology, but I'm not aware of any trials where we randomized people to one group who smoked cigarettes and another group who didn't smoke any cigarettes, and we followed them for 50 years and we saw who died first.
No, I'm not
As
aware
far
of
as I'm
one.
aware, the only evidence we have that would suggest that smoking has any effect on mortality is observational evidence.
Right. Yes.
And if we're going to play this game where we say, well, the reason the people in the butter group had higher mortality is because they smoked, and we're going to look at observational evidence to say smoking has an effect on mortality, why can't I just say the people in those smoking trials ate more butter? He said that that's the case.
Yeah. Well, he read it.
Yeah, I read it, right? And, the other issue that we have here is the past smoking. So people might instinctively come away with the idea that because someone is a past smoker, that they are healthier than a current smoker. And the problem with that, just like alcohol, so we have current alcohol consumers and former alcohol consumers. And the reason that a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, but the reason that some people will quit smoking or quit drinking alcohol is because they actually do, in fact, develop some type of disease like lung cancer or emphysema, which would put them at a higher risk of mortality.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Dwayne, if that was the case, do you think we would see that effect?
I would think so.
If current smokers were at more risk than past smokers, we should be able to see that they would have a higher risk of mortality in this study, right?
You would think so. Yes.
So when we go to table 4 here and we look at the section for butter, and under smoking status here, we have never or past and current. And we see that the past smokers in the level 4, the highest intake of butter, have a higher risk of mortality than the current smokers. So the current smokers actually have a lower risk of mortality than the past smokers. And we actually see that. So they lump all these together for total mortality. And the past smokers have a slightly higher hazard ratio for mortality than the current smokers. If we come on down to the section where we have all the oils, including olive oil, we see the same thing. Now, when we switch from butter to oil, butter has a increase risk of mortality And when
Mhm.
we go to oil, we see a decreased risk. However, the past smokers have less of a decrease than the current smokers, meaning the
Yep.
past smokers have a higher risk of mortality than the current smokers. And when we come on down here with the oils excluding olive oil, we see the same thing. Now, it starts to become attenuated here because
Yeah.
past smokers only have a hazard ratio of 0.89 and the current smokers have a hazard ratio of 0.86. And when we look at the total mortality, it's the same for both of those groups. So if current smokers has an effect or would be the reason that we're seeing the results from this trial, why don't we see that in the evidence? Why is it that current smokers in this trial have a lower risk of mortality than the former smokers? And why don't we see this same relationship in the group without olive oil?
Well, he read it and, you know, he said that smokers, have a higher correlation, but that's not what the data says.
Because he read
And
it.
so he hasn't read it.
So, well, I'm not, you can't call him a liar, Dwayne.
Oh, I'm just saying he
We have
hasn't
to
read
take
it.
him at his word.
But he's a rich man because he likes olive oil.
Now he says different exercise practice patterns. People who eat butter have different exercise practice patterns. Dwayne, I don't even know what that means.
I don't
That
either.
just sounds like gibberish. I don't know what an exercise practice pattern is. But let's just say that he's trying to imply that different exercise modalities have some effect on mortality. What type of evidence is he looking to suggest that that's the case? Would it be observational evidence? Because as far as I know, we have zero trials where we randomize people to a group of one type of exercise, randomize people to another group of to another type of exercise, follow them for 50 years and see who dies first.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's out there.
It's weird how the standard of observational evidence is only going one way.
Yeah.
That's odd. I mean, I'm not a PhD, I'm not a medical doctor, I don't teach epidemiology, but it seems weird in certain circles, probably not if you have a PhD, but in other circles, for us laymen, we would call that a double standard.
I would say that absolutely.
And now, because he read it, Dwayne, in table one, we can actually see that the physical activity, which is reported in met hours per week, is basically the same
Yep.
for all of these cohorts.
Yep.
All right. And it's also weird if we look at the questionnaires that are given. So every 4 years, they get a food frequency questionnaire. And then I'm not sure if it's 2 years or 4 years, they actually get this questionnaire where they actually list how much a physical activity is. Now, he has a problem with food frequency questionnaires because it's self-reported data and you're just having to, excuse me, rely on your memory recall.
Yeah.
However, the reporting for smoking and physical exercise is the same type of reporting. So I'm not really sure why he has confidence in the smoking and the exercise reporting, but not the food frequency questionnaires. It seems weird.
It's a little bit odd to me. It's odd. Sure is.
Now, because he read it, Dwayne, he says that the people who ate butter were just eating different foods.
Well,
Um,
because they're different people.
Based on what evidence? Because he said he didn't even know how much butter they were eating. So how does he know what foods they were eating? What evidence does he have to suggest that they were eating different foods?
I didn't see anything in the
I didn't see anything
questionnaire.
either. That's weird. It's weird how he doesn't know how much butter they were eating, but he does know what foods they were eating.
Hmm.
And if we look in the section titled Dietary Assessment, we can actually see in blue here to capture the overall dietary pattern. We calculated the alternative healthy eating index based on 9 items of food and nutrients, excluding alcohol and polyunsaturated components, scored as 0 to 90, with higher scores representing healthier diets. And this is reference number 25. And what are those foods and nutrients? Well, we have
Yeah.
vegetables, fruit, whole grains, sugar
Sugar
sweetened
sweetened,
beverages and fruit juices,
nuts
nuts and
and
legumes,
legumes.
red and processed meats, omega 3s, polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now, they excluded the polyunsaturated fatty acids, sodium, and they excluded alcohol.
Hmm.
So these would be all of the foods that he's indicating that, well, these people who eat oils are eating these healthier type of foods. But within the study here, they actually captured that dietary pattern. And lo and behold, Dwayne, they adjusted for it.
Wow.
You know what else they adjusted for?
Rich people.
Rich people. Here in red, smoking status
Oh my
and
gosh.
physical activity. In table 3, they
Look
adjusted
at
for
that.
smoking status and physical activity. In table 4, they adjusted for smoking and physical activity. Where's our figure? And in the figure, they adjusted for smoking and physical activity. Interesting.
Well, he obviously read that.
Because he read it. Yes. Going on to his next point, different socioeconomic statuses. Dwayne, these people eating butter are of a different socioeconomic status. Now,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
because he read it, he would have seen that these are the cohorts from the Nurses Health Study 1, Nurses Health Study 2, and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the cohorts from the Nurses Health Studies 1 and 2, all of the participants are nurses. Many of them work at the same hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
They're all women.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back up to table 1 here. We see the age. The mean age is the same. And so these women who all have the same profession, who work in the same work environments, who are the same ages, would have relatively the same salaries, eliminating any socioeconomic difference. In the health professionals follow-up study, Dwayne, all of the participants are doctors. They're all men. They're all married. They all have the same mean age. So these men who all have the same profession, who work in the same work environments, who are the same age, would all have relatively the same income, eliminating any socioeconomic differences.
Bet they love olive oil too.
But they love olive oil.
I'm sorry.
And all of these things can be seen in table 1 because he read it.
He read that. He read. You know he read that. He said he read it.
And one might wonder, Dwayne, how he missed all of these things. And because he read it, and not because he just made his opinion based on the social media posts of others who only posted this small section of table 1 on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
It's because he read it, right?
Yeah, he just read Nikki Norwitz. Yeah, that's it. He did. He read his deal.
Just read Nikki Norwitz. So I can't say that I can't say he didn't read it because he said he did.
Said he did.
And he's a doctor, and I got to take him at his word. And he teaches epidemiology. He says he read it. So, one thing that I would like to discuss is the logical fallacies within this small little section of video here.
Oh my gosh.
So, the first one we have is the appeal to conspiracy. Something regarding Trump and RFK Jr. and Maha.
Yep.
Where he
Wait,
got
that's a
that
bias.
from.
That's a bias. But go ahead.
Isn't that
Sorry.
interesting? Yes.
Yep.
And then the circular reasoning here. So the editors don't like Trump/Maha. Therefore, they published this paper to push back against Trump/Maha. Therefore, the paper is evidence that they don't like Trump/Maha. See the circle?
Yep, I do.
Circle that comes along?
I do.
And I'm not going to say he did this, but I'm just going to read the definition of cherry picking. Cherry picking is a term used to describe the act of selectively presenting only the evidence that supports a particular position while ignoring the contradictory evidence. Let's finish this video up here.
So what am I to think when this paper that suffers from three biases: one, they don't know how much of these oils and butter people eat. Number two, they're lumping these oils together in a weird way. Number three, it's completely imbalanced for all covariates when you look at the raw data, and they proceed nonetheless. What am I to think? And why is it published in JAMA IM?
Well, wait a minute. What did he have to say about JAMA IM before?
Because it was published in a pretty good medical journal, JAMA Internal Medicine.
Yeah.
That's weird.
The truth is, it's a low-tier, low-credibility piece of trash observational nutritional epidemiology study that belongs in the trash basket.
Unlike all of the evidence that he wants to cite for smoking, exercise, and olive oil, right?
You can infer nothing from this garbage study.
Whoa. I'm uncomfortable right now, just even sitting in my chair. First of all, because, he likes to cook with olive oil, so therefore he must be rich. Use that logic statement. And this is one of the most cited and most validated studies that we've ever looked at. How long has it been?
It's up there, man. It's up there.
Years?
Yeah. It's going on for a while. Now he just made a proposition, Dwayne. Nothing can be inferred from this. So his proposition P would be, if we, put this in the positive sense, P would be an inference can be made. And so if we formalize what he just said, P1, I have made an inference from the paper.
Right.
P2, no inference can be made from the paper. Therefore, it can be inferred that no inferences can be made from the paper. That, my friends, is a logical contradiction. This, it's just gibberish.
It is. He made it's like, oh, you can't cite this. You can't cite this study because it's trash. But I'm citing this study because it's trash. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. So,
yet it's published in one of the most prestigious journals where the editors are known.
Wait a minute.
One of the most prestigious
journals where the editors are
for being hashtag resistors to Donald Trump and Maha. What am I to think? What I think is, it's a great example of the blind spot in academia. When academia is so against Maha and RFK Jr., they have a blind spot. They will publish any crap article that supports their view, that quote-unquote fights back. But to me, it's a huge mistake. If you want to engage in the realm of science discussion, the only way to do so is with the absolute most credible evidence. You will not win this war. It will be a Pyrrhic victory if you try to push back on the Maha movement with low credibility studies. You're going to further alienate Americans. You're going to further polarize people. You're going to get people on the other side to hate you even more, and they will not take seriously anything in the pages of JAMA IM.
The prestigious journal, the one that's pretty good. I mean, Dwayne, I'm not a PhD. I'm not a doctor. People aren't going to listen to me on the internet. They're going to see, he's a doctor. He knows what he's talking. He also teaches epidemiology. And it's weird that he missed those things. And I don't know a lot, but Dwayne, there is one thing I do know.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.